It's very easy to say, we're Rolls Royce, we're the best in the world, we don't have to learn from Toyota.
I have a 100-year history with Rolls Royce. If you're just doing this because you want more out of the same group of people, they will see straight through it. What are the 7 habits of highly effective factories? How would I want of my mum to go home from work? That, therefore, is the standard. And for the first time I went, that's the culture that I want.
Hello, it's Ryan Tierney from Lean Made Simple, and today we're doing something really special. Lean Made Simple has teamed up with TLMC, Toyota Lean Management Center, and we're doing a podcast called Let's Talk Lean. And I've done loads of podcasts, loads of videos over the years, but this one in particular I'm really looking forward to, because we've got the opportunity to sit down with Aiden from Rolls Royce. Let's just get straight in, Aiden. What's your story and how did you find out about Lean?
Yeah, so Ryan, I worked for Rolls Royce for 13 years. I run a plant in the Midlands that makes electronics for the various divisions of Rolls Royce. My lean experience has been in the last 4 years. It's really been focused around how we've improved our factory, how we've got the team engaged, but it didn't always start like that. Coming off the back of COVID, it's had some real big supply chain challenges. My plant make electronics, so semiconductors coming off the back of COVID. I think all companies, including Toyota, experienced some challenges in that as well. It's really challenging to keep the team motivated. We knew we had to improve, but when you're trying to make big improvements and the technicians are seeing machines stop for a week at a time because of the semiconductor shortages that we had, it's really hard to drive that improvement culture. And it's all started when probably about 18 months into the role, I had a head of improvement that was working with me, getting really frustrated with me. I was driving production, I was driving how busy our technicians were, and really not focused on the lean principles that I've come to know and love from you guys. And she suggested that I go on with Jeff Leica, the author of The Toyota Way. She suggested that I go on a tour of Toyota and just have a look around. Now, I had a basic awareness of lean, but really, I didn't really understand it. For what I know now, I didn't really understand what was going on. So I came around Toyota with Jeff Leica, and I'll be honest, I probably had some skepticism about whether lean worked in a British culture and environment. But without giving too much away about where I live, I can virtually see this place out my bedroom window.
Really?
That close to the plant. And once I'd been here and seen what these guys were doing, there was really no excuse for why I couldn't go and implement it in my own plant. And what I saw here, I guess, as I left here for the first time, I did what a lot of leaders do, I think, which is I spotted the tools. And I tried to take some things back. I was really excited and engaged. Like any training course, you go back really energized, and my team weren't there quite yet. And also, I was just so tools focused. And there was a bit of a reflection, and I talked about why we didn't really have that traction in the first 18 months that I spent in the role. And I think a lot of that was around, we were quite focused on big scale changes. How can we change this layout? How can we buy this new piece of equipment? And that was probably still the same when I came away from Toyota. I was still struggling at why can't I put this into practice? And I've heard your story many times, Ryan, around how you found Paul Blahyj, and it very similar for me. I was on YouTube, right? How can I embed lean in a factory? How can I take a lean culture? And I came across your content, and I was saying to you, I probably consumed all of it in about 4 or 5 hours, very late on a Saturday night. And I was just like, I'd seen the vision for lean as a system from a, how do we implement it in manufacturing, but never from a cultural perspective. And for the first time, I went, that's the culture that I want. That's the culture that I'm really excited by. And so we started out with a really big Fix What Bugs You event. And I remember it was probably your favorite improvement from 2023 video. And we showed that in the January when we came back in the new year. And we showed it to the team. And the message that I was trying to get across is exactly the message you talk about. We're not trying to change the world with big improvements. These can be really small things that have an impact every day. And I really describe what happened as like a flywheel. That first turn was really, really hard, really, really difficult. But as we got it spinning, it just started to happen, and every day I'd come in and in my inbox was another improvement that someone had done and was really proud of. And, I have a fantastic team back in my plant in Solihull, and they just really embraced it and the energy that it started to create. And I'm convinced now that there's no such thing as a small improvement, because it always leads to something bigger. Someone spots that small improvement and it just naturally starts to lead to something else. So really, my lean experience last 4 years has been really where I've started to embed it and embrace it. And it's just led to lots more learning, which I've tried to embed.
So I've met you a few times now, Aiden, and your passion for lean is it's just incredible. It just kind of oozes out of you. And I think it takes that. Would you agree that it takes that passion and energy to really drive the change?
Absolutely. I've got a fantastic team back at Solihull. But if it's not important to the leader of the factory, it won't be important to everybody else. I think one of the things that really had an impact on me, you talk a lot about books that you've internalized, not reading a book every day, but, really internalizing a few books. And one of the ones that really had an impact of me was the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Sean Covey. And that's probably been a personal framework for how I've tried to lead at the factory. But then it became, so what are the 7 habits of highly effective factories? And what does that look like? So in the intro, we talked a bit about the supplier shortages that we had after COVID. But for us, the first habit is about being proactive, right? And that be proactive for us is about focusing on there's your circle of influence, and then your circle of concern, right? Our circle of influence was all the things that we could do in the factory. How can we really focus on being like a coiled spring so that when those parts came in, we were ready, and that became our focus by just focusing on that circle of influence. And, I think you're a great example of someone who's focused on their circle of influence. You've focused on your seating company in Northern Ireland, and now, look what it's led to. And we did the same, and now we've generated that same interest in our factory within Rolls Royce as well. And focusing on that circle of influence, I think, is really, really important. The second habit is all about begin with the end in mind. And I think that's twofold. We had a really clear future state value stream map. Here's where we want to be. But I didn't have that vision for the culture. And the reason beginning with the end in mind, I think, is really important. It gives you a longer term vision of where you're going. You always talk in lean about taking the long term view of performance. It changes the way you interact with people. It changes the way you talk to the technicians and the members, as you will call them. It changes your view on, right, it's our job to develop them. They need to learn, Maybe the outcome of that problem solving exercise is not that important, but the learning that the person went through is the important thing. It changes your whole perspective of how that works. So the third one is around putting first things first. Every factory has its operational and delivery challenges, and it can be so easy when you come in as a manufacturing manager or a factory leader. And there's always urgent, important stuff every single day, no matter what. There'll be things here in this plant that they'll be urgent and important. But that not urgent but important stuff, you've got to carve out time for it. So when you ask me, does it need that senior leadership sponsorship? Absolutely, because you've got to make that not necessarily urgent but really important stuff. You've got to take that and make.
I think, what I like the interesting side, and I don't see it very often, is that people think, okay, I want to do lean. I'm simplifying it, of course. So you kind of had a little bit of a passion of lean. But then what you did was thought, okay, from a leader, how do I consider implementing that into my place of work? Because lots of people will look at it and say, right, I'm going to almost try to force, which sometimes will meet resistance. But it feels like, listen to you, you've really considered the way that you're going to implement it. And I think that's really key, because to aid sustainability, you've got to pitch that the right way. Because if you imagine the analogy of a domino, and you're not the first domino over to keep this lean journey, if the dominoes aren't aligned, it's going to come to a point where it stops.
Yeah.
And then some leaders will say, well, that domino, I expected to kind of follow all that path down towards the eternal end of lean. But actually, they'll walk away when it don't. So I think what you've done, I think it's really good how you've identified, I want to do lean, right? What leadership styles, what techniques can I do to aid sustainability? I think that's really good. What made you make that decision in your mind to look from a self-leadership point of view?
From a self-leadership point of view, I think every plant manager gets to the point where they realize they can't work it in this way anymore. It's not sustainable for them. And so I think the first thing was the realization that actually it was probably me that had to change. I think the other side of it for me is I was going into a factory that had a lot of experience. I'd never worked in the electronics industry before going in. I'd worked in lots of factories, but not necessarily in electronics. And it was, how can I have an impact? And so I think that's what drove me down that path. And it was that combination of, a large blue chip like Toyota and the small, medium enterprise thinking. I think that combination was like, right, how do I put that together and go, this is what's going to work for my factory?
And it feels like you've done that really well. It feels like you've kind of, we was talking on the way down about the almost translation of what Ryan does and taking it. A lot of people in SMEs can take what Ryan does and do things really quite quickly. Mm-hmm. To do that in a blue chip company, which is almost go upwards to a blue chip company, I imagine that'd be quite difficult into translating simplicity into quite a complex.
Yeah, there's definitely the translate bit. There's also the energize, right? And just make it feel like there's some energy around it. The tools don't often land particularly well in that shop floor environment, but fix what bugs you. That really does land well. People can relate to that. And I think it was that thinking that was really a key switch for us from that, is it Kaikaku, the big improvement, to that smaller, the smaller in-depth improvements right in that level of detail. And there's so many examples. We have a process internally that we apply a coating to our printed circuit boards, and we have to mask off certain areas. And we were doing it with tape, and it would take a period of time. And one of our technicians, they had the silicon phone case, that you have around a smartphone. And they went, well, why can't we have like a silicon phone case that just goes over the bits that we have to apply tape? It saves us, loads of time. Think about the volume of printed circuit boards we got going through. It saves us loads of time. There was one of the people that I work with, one of the technicians, they went to the co-op. And if you go in the co-op now in the UK, you won't see paper labels that tell you what all the product is and the price. You'll see a digital label. And he said, well, why can't we embed that and make it so our printed circuit boards go around the shop with a digital label on it? So, and it's got, you talk about put the answer where the question's asked. It's got on it, well, what's in that box? What's the next operation that it needs to go to? Has it experienced any defects? The first day we implemented this, I spotted 3 consecutive cards that were all the same card type. And they all had defects on, and straight away it draws your attention to it. And the impact of that is that we went and fixed the problem straight away, and it brought problems to the surface. But just empowering the team to go away and do little bits, like I haven't done it. None of this was me. And one that I really liked. So we started our weekly meeting at the sort of middle to back end of last year, and every day we'd do it. I used to come out onto the shop floor, and I'd be rooting around for a HDMI cable. And it was actually one of my technicians said to me, they said, why don't you have a docking station that you just plug into? And it was like, right, I'm not actually very good at this spotting my own waste stuff, but they're really good at it. So, I think it's about being humble as well as you're not perhaps as good at spotting your own waste. You might have seen this lean stuff and done all this research in the background, but you're not reflecting on where that waste is coming on for yourself.
That's a sign of good leadership there, because what you're doing, you're kind of setting the path And we're all in agreement that the people who know the shop floor are people who work on the shop floor. So we can talk about generating Kaizen and improvements. We can only do it to a level because we've not got the expertise they have. So what you've done, shown really good leadership by saying, look, this is what we'd like you to do. And the guys say, well, why don't you just do this? Yeah. You're empowering your workforce to support this lean activity.
Absolutely. And I think it's really important that you do that empowerment, and it has to come from a place of the right intent. So the right intent, if you're just doing this because you want more out of the same group of people, they're smart. They will see straight through it, no matter where you are. You'll give it away somehow. Now, for me, I have a 100-year history with Rolls Royce. So someone in my family has worked for Rolls Royce continuously for the last 100 years. 100 years. So my great granddad, my granddad, my mum for 33 years, wow. And she worked on the shop floor as an inspector for 33 years in Rolls Royce, and now myself.
Unbelievable. It's a nice story. Yeah.
And for me, framing that, how would I want of my mum to go home from work for those 33 years that she worked there? I want her to go home safe. I want her to go home engaged, challenged, stretched, respected. And that, therefore, is the standard that I set when I'm talking to the team members and how I want my team to interact with our team. I think once you've framed it in that way and you've got that emotional connection, why are we doing this? That's really helped me. I know deep down that whenever I make a decision on the shop floor, which I won't always make the right decision, and I won't always make a decision that everybody is happy with, but it's coming from a good place. I am trying to do the right thing by the people that work for in that factory. And I think that's really, really important that, if we go back to the habits, one of the habits that's coming up is think win-win. It has to be win for the company. It has to be win for the technician. It has to be win for the customer. I'm thinking about that. It really reframes that for me as we've got to do it in a way that is right for everybody.
Yeah. Well, what that's done from having lean in your mind, sorry, Ryan, but from having lean in your mind, having this 100-year family history brings it from the art and the mind. So although you've got the theory and you're passionate to do what Ryan's kind of set you on the path to do, but having that family history, it makes it part of your art as well. And that makes it, in terms of your will and belief to succeed, you've got your family history that you want to kind of continue. Yeah. That's amazing.
That, that's my personal connection. You guys will have yours as well, and what makes you personally connect with lean.
That's similar to your business, with it being a family business with your brothers and then with your mother background with
that's right.
It's got a similar feel to
it. I'm so glad you said that, because I think any company that has been successful at lean always has an emotional why they're doing it. We're not just doing this to make our processes easier. And it's always an emotional why behind it. For us, we're changing people's lives by providing better seating. People that haven't got out of bed for 2 years are now being able to sit in a chair because of our product, and that's why we're improving. And you've got your way through. Is this the type of place my mother would like to work in? Creating that emotional connection is that's brilliant.
That why is so important, because once you get once you get to a point of you're good, you're stable, going to great, there has to be a massive why, because it's really easy. Good to great is so much harder than that first stability bit. You're doing things nobody's ever done before. It's that next step. And I think that that big why of why are we doing this, it has to be bigger than the reason that you just stay where you are and stay stable, stay comfortable. And I think that, that's helped me in that instance as well.
Yeah, it's amazing. This is going to be so valuable. I really mean that, because there's people that think, and before this conversation, you think Rolls Royce, they've got it all figured out. Right. They know what they're doing. But it's incredible, the amount of blue chip companies that have came to us to learn, Rolls Royce, Coca-Cola, these companies that in your mind, you think they have it all figured out. They've got it all sorted. They don't need lean. They don't need efficiencies. But it's brilliant to hear your stories of the cable and the silicon thing for the PCB board.
Amazing.
It's really nice to hear that every single company has small things that they can change, no matter if you're Rolls Royce, John Deere, Caterpillar, or Seaton Matters.
It's
really brilliant.
Absolutely. Look, there's always room to improve, isn't there? Yeah. These guys you're at a different level of maturity to what we are even. When I came here and heard about you talking about, right, how do we save X seconds through making sure the part is 90 degrees away from where the technician is. No, that is a fantastic level of maturity. I aspire to be in that place. But it's about the journey that you're on. Whatever factory you go into, any company, it's got its starting point. In some places that's stable. In some places that's, you've got to create that stability. Then you talked about the urgent, important matrix, right? You've got to give yourself that headspace initially with some stability so you can start to focus on the...
Yeah. And I think this is kind of, we talked quite a lot off camera. We did over dinner last night, is that you look at Rolls Royce, I think it's a really good, you've been to an SME, it's really good now that we're quite local together, Rolls Royce and Toyota, for two big companies to come together like that. But I think even though you're very different, because you're high variation, long cycle process compared to a relatively quick takt time that we have here, it's not about your people looking for a 0.1 of a second saving. It's about the concept of them looking for improvement. And that's key. Lots of people will come to Toyota and say, they build a car in X amount of time. That's got nothing to do with medical or service industry or long cycle high variation process. But the ability to give someone the opportunity to say, stop, I've got a problem, can be applied to any business, SME, blue chip, service, non-service, manufacturing, non-manufacturing. So I think the point I'm trying to make is that anybody can come to Seating Matters or to Toyota or to Rolls Royce and see and learn from what the people are doing. Because the people are the most powerful thing. That's why we're sat here now, isn't it?
Again, lean's that set of principles, isn't it? I said, I spoke to you before, but however many people you've got working in your manufacturing plant or company, that's how many different opinions there are on how to do things. And lean for me, it's that set of core principles that guides decision making. It's what would we do if we were thinking lean here? And that's really helped me make decisions as well. It's helped my team make decisions, and they've done the work. They've been absolutely brilliant, but just giving that set of guiding principles.
We said earlier, what would lean do? You ask yourself, what would lean do?
What would lean do?
Yeah,
what would lean do? And I think that's where we that's really helped me in my guiding principles. I'll give a really specific example. So we talk about semiconductor shortages, right? And I think one of the things we were doing in the beginning is, if we had a shortage of a particular part, we'd be like, what can we make? What can we find to keep ourselves busy? And we were effectively measuring how busy we were. And then that shortage part would come in. And because we'd built ahead on something else, we'd consumed a component that we needed. So it ended up that we actually couldn't make that product either. Yeah. And so, what we've got back to now is we make what the customer needs. No more, no less. We make what the customer needs. And the busyness is almost a second, it's a second, it will come. If you trust the process, you'll feel an initial hit. And then once your processes are primed again, you'll see that metric start to recover. And that's a big leap of faith. It took a lot of support from my senior manager as well, who gave me the air cover to make sure that we were able to do that. That one metric might suffer, but trusting that if we apply these principles, take the leap of faith, it will get back there in the end.
So you were saying you were almost incentivizing people to overproduce in a way, whereas now you've changed that.
Yeah.
So you give a really good analogy before we started recording about it's like putting all the doors on the car, but not putting the wheels on. Could you explain that?
So we're trying to give an example on it, but if it takes 10 minutes to put a door on a car, you could put 10,000 doors on a car, and you'd get a metric which said how much time did that take, and you'd almost feel really good at the end of the day because you'd put all these doors on the car and you'd kept everybody busy. But if no wheels are being put on further down the line, the customer's getting absolutely nothing. And I think that was the realization for us, is it doesn't matter how busy we are. It matters that the right product's coming off the end of the line. And the way that we've implemented that is making sure that the whether it's standard work in progress, SWIP, stations between each process, we have a min and a max level, and it's really clear what should be in process. And if it gets too full, we take a decision on, is it now the right time to stop? Most often it is. And sometimes it isn't. We do get our challenges where actually the right thing to do here is to carry on because we can see how we catch it up. And you guys must have experienced similar stuff through COVID where there were supply chain disruptions and it has started to really recover now, but it is still a challenging place. And the parts that I make, that there's around 20,000 components go into one product. There will always be blips in the supply chain. Same for Toyota. It's just how we respond to those.
We mentioned earlier on, you've been Jeffrey Leica tour. You're also part of a 2-day course with us at Toyota a couple of weeks ago. And again, mentioned earlier on in the podcast, there's a collaboration between Rolls Royce and Toyota now. Would you like to explain that collaboration a little bit and what type of things we're doing together?
Yeah, so we're going to work really closely together on the adoption of lean in Rolls-Royce manufacturing facilities, taking the learning that you guys have got here. So the course that we came on last week, we did the 2-day experience for me and all of my team, which was really great because I think there was advantages if we'd done it in the beginning, but there's also advantages doing it now. The team were really equipped. I think we asked you some really challenging questions last week, but that's been fantastic of how do we start to take the learning that you guys have had making cars and translate that into, and Rolls-Royce, BMW make the Rolls-Royce motor cars. So Rolls-Royce is an aerospace and nuclear and power systems company. So it's really about how we embed that within our domestic and international facilities. So really excited to see how that goes. But again, it's just you guys are focused on what you could control, and it's created the influence that you have locally. And I'm sure you guys will get a lot out of it as well. From as you said, a lot of our factories are quite different. They're not a moving line, but the principles are exactly the same.
If I was to sum you up in one word, right, and I've met you a few times now, the word humility comes to mind, because it's very easy to say, we're Rolls Royce, we're the best in the world, we know what we're doing, we don't have to learn from Toyota, we don't have to learn from a small seating company in Northern Ireland, we've got it all figured out, we're Rolls Royce. But that vibe isn't coming across at all. You're so willing to learn. You're so open to ideas. Like every time we engage and talk, you're like asking questions and writing notes. And does that humility come? Is that a Rolls Royce thing, or is that a you thing?
No, I do think it's a Rolls Royce thing. I think it might look like, of course, from a brand perspective, we make amazing products, right? But there's always ways that we can improve as a company. And I think, the collaboration we are doing with Toyota right now is showing that we are a humble company and we want to learn as well from others in the local area, and we can learn because there's a lot that we can improve on as well. As I said, we've got a tremendous product. You can't, if you go to the main engine assembly plant in Derby, you can't help but be wowed. I've one of my colleagues, Joe, he talked about this, but I want people to be as wowed by the process of making the product as they are by the actual product itself. And I think that's really where we're going to take it to, and we're starting to get there.
I think the biggest compliment I could place, I know without embarrassing, I know how much you think of Ryan, and we have, again, quite a lot of discussions, you can imagine. One thing that really frustrates me, I can go to Northern Ireland and Southern Ireland, an island, and I've got Ryan Tierney, who's a voice, and is influencing the voice of lean. You can go to Wales and we've got Oliver Conger from Roto, for example. And really, it frustrates me sometimes. It don't feel like we've got this voice in England. And I said to Ryan, Ryan, I don't know what we're missing. He said on the way around here, you need somebody like you. And I think that's a real compliment. You're like you so much humility, as Ryan pointed out, for a blue chip company, one of the biggest companies in the world, and you've got a passion for it. And you need to almost bottle that up and kind of sell it on a market somewhere, because it'd sell out.
My first focus is how do I help Rolls-Royce get in all of our factories? But obviously, a bit like I said with it, I'm going to repeat myself again, but I think it's a really important point. You focus on what you can control, and your circle of influence and your circle of concern all of a sudden look a similar size. And you really grow it. And I think that's a key point. So absolutely. I think it's about developing our people as well. I want it to be lasting. I've said I've got a 100-year history with Rolls Royce. How do I make it so that the technicians on the shop floor, their families get a 100-year history? Rolls Royce meant I got to be the first in my family to go to university. I'm really, really proud of that. They sponsored me through university, and I did an apprenticeship program with them, and that's how that happened. I want those same opportunities for my daughter. I want them for the people that work in our factories at the moment. So absolutely, I definitely see it bigger than I just want to make our factory really, really good.
I'm a big believer in fate, to kind of finish off. And the original podcast that we was going to do, the original dates, you weren't available for because you was at your brother's wedding. But I think we can both agree, I'm really happy that the dates got changed, because I think this is absolutely valuable, not just to us, but for the people who are going to watch this. They're going to get so much to take away from it. No. Really, really good.
I think if I go back to those Saturday nights where I was watching you, Ryan, and when I came round, it's I probably never thought I'd be sat here. I said to Ryan earlier, sorry to embarrass you, but I was a bit starstruck earlier. It was, but it was, it's real pleasure to come on, and I hope it's not the last time either. I hope I can talk about what I've done since in the future.
Sometimes you almost have to pinch yourself. If you stand back, like zoom out to see what's actually happening right now. We're doing a live podcast on the Toyota factory floor with Rolls Royce. Like, for me, 10 years ago, if somebody had told me you'll be doing a live podcast with Rolls Royce, with Toyota, at the Toyota Gemba,
Have you always known that this was the influence you wanted to have? So did you have in your mind that Coca-Cola and when did that start to click that was something you wanted?
This is right. Good question. Good question.
I suppose exactly like you at the start, I just wanted to sort out our company. Our factory was a mess, like the worst company you've ever seen, and it was just really stressful. And I just wanted to make life easier for our people and for me, because I was working till 10 o'clock every night and really stressed out. And then I just got into it, similar to you. I just got really excited, and people started to come on tours, and then I started to do videos on YouTube on my iPhone. And it just snowballed into what we're doing now. We're actually changing an entire country, and my vision is to make Ireland the next Japan. And now there's thousands of people in Ireland doing lean.
Absolutely.
It's just, and I see this, it's just going to get bigger.
So much thirst for it in Ireland, isn't there?
Yeah.
So much thirst. Okay, thank you very much for that. That was a really amazing interview. I think when we're doing podcasting, it's my first experience of being a co-host. You come in and you think, okay, what's the message going to be like? We have little cards we look at before we come on. We absolutely kind of didn't need that. That was pure passion. And again, I think you're a lot younger than me. I guess you guys are a similar age. Please, whenever you feel there's a stumbling block or there's an hurdle to get over, maintain that passion, because it'll always shine through. So if you want to hear any more about Aiden, his name's Aiden Rogers. You'll see his name on the bottom of the podcast. Find him on LinkedIn. I'm pretty sure you'll be more than happy to connect with new people to talk about his journey. Aiden, thanks very much. Really good.
Thanks, Aiden. Thank you.
Thank you.